Well, welcome to everyone again. My name is John Slattery, and I'm one of the directors of the Science for Seminaries project, along with Curtis Baxter, my colleague here. So I'm going to get us started today and just talk a bit about who we are at AAAS and Dozer. And again, like Katie said, if you had any questions, we're going to save all of those to the end. We're just going to talk for about 15, 20 minutes combined, and then we'll have plenty of time to ask questions after that. All right. So just give me a second here. Okay, great. So AAAS, if you don't already know, stands for the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and we are the Dialogue on Science, Ethics, and Religion program. And underneath that, this is the Science for Seminaries project. So now that you have all those memorized, we can move on. So what is AAAS? Many of you are probably familiar with it, but just in case you're not, AAAS has been around since 1848. It is the world's largest general scientific membership society. It's the publisher of the science family of journals, which includes, you see in this picture, Science, Science Signaling, Science Translational Medicine, and various other ones. Represents over 10 million scientists worldwide with over 140,000 members to it. So this is just a few pieces here of looking at sort of the website and things that are offered online. And you can see one of the great things we have right now at sciencemag.org is you can see free coronavirus research, whether or not you have, you're a member of AAAS or not. You can also go to AAAS.org, which is the one on the right-hand side, which gives you access to lots of things that AAAS is doing. So AAAS is sort of divided into two parts. We have the publishing side, which is science and the family of journals, and then we have the program side. There's a whole bunch of different programs that work with engaging science with the general public. And this goes all the way from science and science policy fellows, placing people in forms of government, Sea Change, which works with increasing diversity in science in the US and around the world, as well as Dozer. And so Dozer has been around for about 25 years. This is our 25th anniversary here, to facilitate communication between scientific and religious communities. So what this means is a lot of different things. So our main activities and projects are Science for Seminaries, which I'll talk about more in just a minute. We have Engaging Scientists and Science Religion Dialogue, which largely focuses on scientists and communities of scientists and helping them to understand how to talk to religious groups. Also working with museums and people that are actively already engaging with the public. Science in Synagogues, Science and Continuing Education for Pastors, as well as a bunch of public lectures and annual meeting symposia. So every February, AAAS hosts an annual meeting, which has been going on for about 150 years, which brings together the best science of the day, as well as lots of sessions on communicating that science to the public. And Dozer is always a large presence at that meeting, and we're very proud of that fact. We also host public lectures at least once a year, sometimes multiple times a year. We actually just had one a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Ruha Benjamin from Princeton talking about race, technology, and religion, which is a really fantastic lecture. And then in a few months in December, we're going to have another large public lecture as well. So make sure to look out for that. So Science for Seminaries has been around since 2013, 2014. It started as an outreach to say, how can we reach out to seminaries and put good science into the theological curriculum? And the main piece here was, we don't want to just have one-off classes that are just taught for a semester and then go away. We want to place science into the core curriculum to both help good science reach future pastors, but also help those seminaries be able to communicate with what's going on in the world and where their congregants are going to be. So that first phase was 10 schools and over 110 courses and 70 campus events happened there. Phase 2 has been going on the last couple of years. So far, we have 24 schools broken out into 3 cohorts that have already been a part of phase 2 that's ongoing right now. And within those 24 schools, they've already done over 55 events, 80 courses, and affected over 1,900 students. And part of this, part of the program is to pair each school with 2 science and 2 theology advisors, where the leaders are attending multiple AAAS events. So this is just a sort of quick overview of where some of these schools are. You can see the phase 1 versus the 3 cohorts, just to show the reach of this program. And one of the reasons why we're so proud of it is because of the diversity. You know, if I could go through lots of slides here, but I won't, about the theological diversity of all these different schools, the ethnic diversity of the schools, from the, you know, from a very conservative evangelical schools to what some might call very progressive mainline seminaries. You know, we're really here just to help future pastors be able to connect with good science, wherever, meeting that seminary, wherever their needs are. And that's really the main sort of benefit of the program. So the other part of Science for Seminaries, just so you all understand, is becoming a pedagogical resource. So if you've been to scienceforseminaries.org, you can see how that's already going on with the syllabi that are there. 14 videos are online right now. I would very much recommend you go and check them out. And you can use them right now in your courses. And you can use the transcripts. And right now we actually have Spanish transcripts too, if that's helpful for you as well. And we're currently working on more videos. And on top of that, we're also working on a brand new website, which will be sciencereligiondialogue.org, and which will be launched in the next couple of months, hopefully, but definitely before the end of the year. So, and this is just part of what we're doing as we partner with seminaries, is being able to offer it even to schools that don't get the grant. And whatever Science for Seminaries looks like going forward past this cohort 4, being able to offer whatever we can in terms of being a resource to those schools. So I'll just close with this slide here and hand it over to Curtis, just to ways to stay connected to us. sciencemag.org for the Science Magazine, AAAS.org for general membership, and other programs you can check out, scienceforseminaries.org, as well as, of course, we're active on Facebook, on Twitter, and you can see all our videos as well as all of AAAS's videos on YouTube here. So I am going to stop sharing now and hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Mr. Curtis Baxter.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, very much. And I'm going to share my screen with the next slide presentation here. Wonderful. And I hope everyone can see that. Thank you all for being here with us this afternoon, and we look forward to having some good conversations at the end of this little short presentation I have for you. John went through some of the history and the pieces of the puzzles there for the Science Seminaries project, and now I'm going to get to the sort of, they say, the nitty-gritty of it, and how you get to be a part of this last cohort of the project as well. So just starting off with some of the overall project objectives. The overarching goal, as John mentioned, is to help prepare future religious leaders to be equipped and to be able to find resources when it comes to science and technology, to better prepare them to be engaged and be able to have conversations with their constituents when they go out into their ministries as well as into their own vocational settings. Another one is to build networks between seminary faculty and local scientists. And this is a part of the project where, once accepted and be a part of the cohort, we connect the seminary faculty with local science to help them navigate through science resources in the areas they like to engage with. And then another one is to broaden the engagement of science with the broader community. We do this through a variety of ways, through a summer retreat, as well as a pre-conference workshop, AAR, that we hosted last year. We'll host another one this year. We can talk more about that later, which will be on, I think, November 29th, if I'm correct. And so these are some of the pieces here. And the picture to the left is a part of, was a part of phase one, where a number of faculty came to Newagon, Maine, and hopefully with everything going on, and hopefully COVID is taken care of and nipped in the bud, we'll be at Newagon, Maine next year. And we can talk about some of those events and activities you have to be a part of as well. So some of the minimum project requirements is that the seminary, to be a part of it have to be ATS accredited. At least 2 faculty members have to be committed to achieving the project goals and committed to being a part of the AAAS-led activities. The summer retreat is one. Shortly after being accepted to the project, you have to attend a AAAS-sponsored campus curriculum, AAAS sponsored curriculum meeting, which more than likely, I'm not sure, they'll be either held virtually or hybrid next year. We have questions about that later, as well as John mentioned, each year AAAS hosts the AAAS annual meeting where a lot of forefront science is discussed, and so at least one seminary faculty member from the project seminary will have to attend that as well. Next is the creation and/or strong revision of at least two core courses that are in the MDiv programs. And I will say here that all the strong proposals and all those that have been awarded grants in this project have all been strong revisions and not a creation of a new course. As all of you are probably well aware, it's really hard in a curriculum that is very tight as is to create a new course. And by just integrating science to your core courses, it will be a whole lot easier and helpful and beneficial to your students as well. And the last requirement is to at least host one campus-wide science theme event. And there's a number of examples of seminaries of how they did this in regards to campus lectures, workshop series, and a number of other ways we can discuss as well. So the first step is to the letter of interest. So it's a length of 2 pages. So it has to be concise and compelling. And as my New Testament professor used to tell me, you need to be succinct as well. And so there's not a lot of space. We don't give you a word count or the font size, but you have a very short amount of time within 1 to 2 pages to compel why you ought to be a part of this. And once again, the selection criteria is the ATS accreditation, a demonstration of institutional commitment to cultural engagement. So part of the ATS accreditation and some of their standards is that one of these cultural engagement standards is science. And so just to talk a little bit about how you do that and how you are probably doing it already at your institutions and how you will build upon that with this project as well. The ability to integrate into at least 2 core courses, as mentioned in regards to the MDiv courses and how those will impact your students as well and how that will help them going on into their own future vocations and such. Institutional capacity to implement the grant. So this builds upon the 2 seminary faculty members. If it's just one faculty member who is submitting the LOI, and then that sort of raises a yellow flag a little bit in regards to buy-in from other faculty members and how they can be able to implement that on their own. So that's why we always ask for 2 faculty members to be a part of this as well. Commitment to sustainability beyond the length of the project. So the length of the project is 18 months. So roughly, if you go through the whole process, you start roughly in April, May of 2021 and go on to October, December of 2022. And understandably, once the integration has occurred, we will hope that the science revisions and those core courses will be there, as well as the campus event. So one way of looking at it is that maybe you have a annual lectureship at your institution that you say, well, every 3 or 4 years we will be engaging with science, or some of those other ways as well in regards to bringing in more faculty members to be a part of this project as well, outside of the 2, and more core courses or other courses to be engaged with this as well. We can talk more about that a little bit later. At least 2 faculty members, as mentioned. This is helps out in regards to contact points, as well as to making sure that it is sustainability, that the sustainability is there, as well as this will help the reviewer say yes, that they are committed to doing this project there. And lastly is the commitment to supporting at least one campus-wide event. As I mentioned, you can do this in a variety of ways, lectureships, workshops, and as such. We can talk about some of the how other schools have done this in the past later on. So in addition to the criteria, we also that you address these areas. So brief biography of and contact information of the two faculty members. Doesn't have to be a lot, a couple of sentences. And one word of advice is maybe hyperlink to your faculty page that you want us to review. That would be helpful as well. And another suggestion is that hyperlink, don't suppose that those who are reading your LOIs know everything about your institution. Maybe highlight some interesting points, as well as hyperlink to the website or a particular web page you want us to go to just to get more insight to your projects as well. Highlight potential impact of the project on the students, faculty, and the community at large. Of course, as mentioned, this is the overarching goal is focused on the seminary students and as they go out and be able to engage and help prepare them to have these conversations. But as John mentioned in a pedagogical resource, how is this helping out other faculty, yourselves, as well as other faculty and your community at large? Are you bringing in local pastors there to be engaged in this conversation as well, or alumni as well in regards to those campus-wide events? Other programs, projects in the past have done that too. And then lastly, preliminary ideas on at least two core required courses and the campus-wide event. Doesn't have to be totally fleshed out, but at least an idea of where you like to go in regards to the science, the course area, biblical studies, theology, ethics, pastoral care and counseling, as well as the science you were thinking about engaging with, neuroscience, astronomy, whichever sciences you may think about engaging with, and maybe a paragraph or two on that in 2 pages. It doesn't have to be, like I said, totally fleshed out, but a good summation of it would be helpful. And lastly, the asterisks here, no budget information is required, at least not on the first step right here in regards to LOI. And so not to worry about budget items. That's something we have to cross later on, as well as due to the policies of our founder, the John Templeton Foundation, this project cannot fund work that is primarily focused on bioethics and ecology or environmental things. However, there have been examples, and we can talk about this in the Q&A discussion portion, of how projects have engaged with that outside the prior requirements of the core courses, as well as the campus-wide event as well. And so we can talk more about that later. So just to give you a little a preview of what to expect in the next phase, if invited to submit a full proposals, 8 to 10 pages. Essentially, I would think about it this way, that the LOI is the foundation. You're just going to build upon that and expound upon that in the full proposal stage. And so you'll have a number of sections here that you just build upon and talk more about your institution. And the majority of that proposal should be about the project description, as well as other project description, 3 or 4 pages on it, and how you seek to engage in the project with the sciences and the campus-wide event as well. And there are some attachments or some extra things that are needed, the faculty CVs, and a letter of support from the dean or a key administrative figure at your institution. One thing I always like to mention, as well as in both phases, as well as the LOI and the proposal stage, is to make sure you put this on your administrator's calendar early. So let them know that you're thinking about this and get their support in, and whatever other things you need to be cleared by administrative level folks as well. We've had in the past where folks are at the 10-yard line, or really at the 5-yard line, and because of not getting permission on or getting clearance from certain administrators, were not able to fulfill their full proposal. So start early. And then another piece here is dates to remember. So the LOI is open until October 2nd. So you have a couple more weeks here, a good month almost, yeah. Or more than a month, and it's a couple weekends. Early November is when we're making decisions on LOIs and then requests for proposals. And then that will be open up until early January. And then the full proposals are due. And then right before, usually do it right before the annual meeting, we announce who has been accepted to the project. And that'll be our final cohort. And just to give you a little insight into the review process, we have a external advisory committee that reviews these, and then they submit their suggestions and reviews and comments to us, and then internally we make them along with some other stakeholders, ATS and others as well. And lastly, contact information. So here is my email address as well as John's email address. And the last one is our consultant, Drew Rick Miller, who is our consultant to the project, has extensive experience in our project, both phase 1 and phase 2, as well as he's very knowledgeable in regards to the religion science conversation in a variety of areas. And you can reach out to him if you have any questions, or you reach out to any of us and him as well in regards to how to make your LOI stronger as well, and any other questions you may have. And so with that, I'll stop, and then we can go on to the question session. And thank you all again.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to start us off in one of the questions that was raised. Can programs apply if they're not MDiv programs, for example, doctoral programs? So a few people have sort of raised this question, and so the short answer is yes, with a caveat, right? So the main purpose of the program is to affect future pastors, right? So because of that, things that are in doctoral programs are best a sort of extra part or an auxiliary part of the program. So we've had multiple seminaries in the past that have done the main courses through their master's work, but have also been able to affect seminars and coursework that is particularly through doctoral work. So Curtis, does that sort of sum it up in that regard?
Yes.
Yeah, so and you can do different master's programs. So the reason why MDiv was focused on, and I think one of the comments I saw passing by said, was this sort of written at a different time? And sort of the answer is yes. I mean, 7 years ago, and then re-upping about 4 years ago. I mean, a lot keeps changing within seminary education. I think that the main part here is that this is a program for future pastors, as well as future chaplains and other types of ministers. So I think if you can make a case that this is putting good science into the core courses of future pastors and ministers, I think that's a case that we will take very seriously. I think that's the main part of it there. Okay, let's see here. A few questions about eligibility. Curtis, I'm going to throw this one to you here. If the seminary is embedded in a university, can they work together with the science faculty elsewhere in the university, not just in the seminary?
Oh, most definitely. I think that's a good opportunity there to show that there's some forethought in it. So yes, they can, and I think it makes it's a good strong that sets them up for a strong proposal in regards to relying on their local scientists. Not saying that will put those who aren't embedded in a university at a disadvantage. But yes, that's definitely a way of showing that there's this synergy between the seminary and the institution.
All right, the next one is, must both faculty members be full-time faculty? Not necessarily. It's helpful if the main project leader is a full-time faculty member, because one of the things we ask for is sustainability. Can this last beyond 18 months? And if one of the main project leaders will be only funded through this grant, then it's hard to make a compelling case that this type of work will be sustained beyond 18 months. But we've had plenty of faculty members that have been part-time or adjunct faculty that have been a part of the grant. All right, what if they don't have an MDiv DMin program, but instead have chaplains and clergy taking other courses?
It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I would sort of go back to that question of that question of we're looking at core courses as a part of a curriculum, right? So it's, you know, there's a case by case question here that I think, you know, we can talk about in more detail based on the individual seminaries, but typically there's some sort of course of study, and that course of study has specific core courses. Now, we've had plenty of seminaries that have said, well, we don't really go by that model anymore. We go by the model of here's all the courses you can take, and you have to take X amount of courses within this large group, and there are no core required courses. And if that's the case, you just need to describe that and explain that to us in a sentence or two, and let us know how that's unique. And I think that the same goes for any sort of unique way that, well, we're not giving out MDivs, we're giving out something else, or we're giving out certificates or something along the lines, and this is to train ministers or chaplains or pastors, and here's how this grant would work for us. So I think if you can make a specific case for that, I think that could be a very compelling case there.
Yes.
All right, Curtis, you want to take the next one? Does the integration into two courses need to have the same science approach? So for example, could one course focus on critical digital literacy and another on racial disparities and public health?
So the short answer is no, they both don't have to focus on the same science. A number of projects have focused on the same science within their whole project or within the whole LOI, but no, not necessarily. So it depends on, as it looks like as mentioned, it seems like there's already an idea of what they like to engage with, and that's great. But no, you don't have to have the same science in both courses.
Yeah, and the follow-up to that question, are you looking for engagement with traditional academic areas like neuroscience, biology, and data science? I mean, I think what we're looking for is an honest and deep engagement with contemporary, up-to-date science. Some seminaries have done that it's pretty much the same type of science they're generally working with. Typically, because as you all know, seminaries have a lot of different types of people and a lot of different professors. Typically, there's more than one science that fits in there. But there's no requirement that you have to look at neuroscience as a part of the project. Or you have to look at evolution, right? Some schools do that as their primary piece. Some schools barely touch that because it doesn't really apply to their population. So it's a matter of fitting the LOI into what works for the population of your school.
And may I add a little something?
Yeah, please.
As well as, and just to maybe a sentence or two about why selecting that science is going to help the students, right? So if it's in a pastoral care course, how is neuroscience or how is engaging with biology going to impact the students as they go forward into their own vocations? The impact of it as well might be helpful.
Yeah, and that goes exactly with the next question, that are there specific priorities for areas of science to be integrated, such as genetics, psychopathology, urban agriculture, et cetera? And Curtis, I would typically say no, like there's not really priorities there. If you look at AAAS, if you go to AAAS.org and you look at the sections of AAAS and how we understand science, it's a very broad understanding, right? Science is not one idea, it's not one person, right? So one thing that we go about with all the programs in AAAS is that science is made up of people, right? Modern science is defined by modern scientists, and it's not defined by ideas. I mean, it is, but those ideas come from tangible people. And that's why such an important part of this project is connecting seminaries with scientists that are close to them, or at least that are doing work that is really relevant to that seminary. And whenever you come to the large events with AAAS, we're always bringing in multiple scientists from multiple fields to be able to talk. So no, there's not a necessary one type of science that works for you. It's more like what Curtis was saying, what is the best thing that's going to help your student population, or where's the biggest need for your school? Maybe you already have a lot of people talking about creation and evolution, and you really don't have anybody talking about neuroscience or pastoral care. So maybe there's an avenue for you to go. All right, let's see. Methodist Theological School in Ohio is interested in expanding on this year's Dozer theme of AAR. So if you're going to AAR, we're doing a pre-conference workshop on racism and anti-racism in science and theology. Would that fit within the limitations set by Templeton Foundation and others? Yeah, it would. It would. I mean, it's not like, so I think like everything else, it's how you approach the topic, right? So, I mean, it's sure, the theme is just fine. In fact, we have a couple of seminaries now that are dealing a lot with issues of race and racism. And so we certainly welcome that conversation, obviously. And so, but it's all about what does that tangibly look like in the courses, right? That's what you can't do a lot in an LOI, but we read a lot of them and we can see pretty quickly whether or not this is thought through and people are thinking about how to do this, or whether or not this stuff is already going on, and so it's really about that application. How are you applying the science, and how is that adding things to the courses? Curtis, does that sum it up there?
Yes, and once again, it's always going back to how's it impacting the students. Yeah, so yeah, definitely so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see.
So the next question is how.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the next question is how do chaplains fit into ministers as a category? And I keep on going. And are they included in your target group, or are you more parish based? So the answer to that one is, I think my experience is that chaplains have to go through MDiv programs. And so, especially if they have to be ordained and as such. So no, they're included in this as well, as especially if they're chaplains going into areas of, say, hospice. Like I'll take a preference, a privilege. My wife is a hospice chaplain, and she needs to know a little bit about science, as well as those in the hospital setting, even military chaplains as well. And so I think we use the term religious leaders, and definitely chaplains are religious leaders as well as parish-based is fine too. There've been some institutions have focused on parish-based and had some programs within their education. Their field education in regards to parish. But that same thing can go for chaplains as well. So you can be creative there in regards to that and how to create engagement opportunities for both.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, the traditional arrangement of the grant is for MDiv programs, but we all recognize the changing face of seminary education and online, in person, all the other pieces. And so I think something that a lot of LOIs miss is explaining how their school works at the beginning and whether or not they're already engaged in science in the past. So I think if you can explain that a little bit, how the setup works, what your current engagement is, and then how this would add to that, or what this would look like and why that's important to your school, and you hit all those pieces, I think that makes for a really, really compelling letter. Okay, do the core courses have to be required of every program, or can we focus on courses that are required for just one of our programs, like only rabbis or pastors? Yes, I think as we talked about before, the core courses, I think they're really focused on one program. I mean, it's making a pitch that we're affecting future pastors or future rabbis with this set of courses, and we're putting good science into that into that set. So it's not necessary that these be applicable to every single master's student. Let's say you were a bigger school and you had multiple different degree programs. You really want to focus on the one and make that pitch that, we're going to put good science into those courses. If you make a pitch that says we're going to put great science into 10 different courses with 10 different professors, it will be very hard to believe how you're going to do that in 18 months. That's a lot of people, and that's a lot of organization and all that other stuff. So we're not, this is not a $2 million grant. These are $75,000 grants over 18 months. So you have to be able to accomplish what you can really accomplish there. So we recognize that. All right. let's see, Curtis, I'm gonna throw this one to you. Mental wellness and healthcare within the context of a pastoral recognition of another. Would mental wellness fit into your understanding of science?
I would, well, yes, I would say so. And I would like to see how they would write that in the LOI, but we've had projects in the past that have focused on mental wellness in regards to dietary, nutritional, if you're thinking about it in regards to science of nutrition and circadian cycles of maybe getting good sleep and things like that, and really teasing out how the science of those pieces really work to help out, it fit into that mental wellness and healthcare category. Or even in regards to mindfulness is another one that pops up every once in a while too. Yes, so those are fine. Those, yeah.
Yeah, and then related to that, could you give a few more examples of topics or ideas that have counted as science in previous successful LOIs? So I can do one better than that. Let's see here. I'm going to share my screen for a second here. Let's see how well this works here.
See, John's prepared.
See, I'm prepared. That's right. I'm prepared. Okay, so this is Science for Seminaries website. And if you look, there's currently 124 syllabus resources here. And if you look at some of the science topics here, you get a really good sense. Now, these are just general topics, health and wellness, archaeology, earth science, etc. But if you click on any one of them, it should narrow down the field, and then you can get into more details about what this look like. So just these top two here, one was at Bethany Theological Seminary in Indiana, and that was focusing on human nature, genetic engineering, human dignity, CRISPR. The next one was a medical ethics class taught at Kenrick Glennon, which is a Catholic seminary in Missouri, and that dealt with end-of-life sexuality and gender identity. The next one is at Wartburg Theological Seminary in Ohio, talking about transhumanism, psychology, technology, and trauma. So just in those three brief schools, you see a wide range of sciences there. So I think that as sort of a short answer to it, you know, there's a lot of topics available to you. I mean, we just finished up one of our large week-long workshop retreats over Zoom, of course. And we had speakers there talking about history of science, sociology, evolution, physics, genetics, neuroscience, what am I missing? Technology, healthcare, cosmology, you know, I mean, you name it. We probably had a seminary that's dealt, we had a whole chunk on artificial intelligence that was done last year at a seminary in Iliff out in Denver. So it's a pretty broad range of types of science. I think, you know, something that some previous professors have said they found really helpful when they're considering how to write this grant and how to do this is to look at their courses and look at what's already being taught, right? And be able to say, okay, here's a place where I'm talking about cultural perceptions, and instead of cultural perceptions, I could talk about the science of this, right? The science of what modern biology says about what it means to be human, what modern physics says about creation, to use very, you know, typical examples, or neuroscience says about pastoral care. So those are probably the three most popular ones that are used in terms of the sciences that we encounter. But like you saw from that list and that you can peruse on the website, we've seen a lot of different engagements, and that's what makes part of this grant so helpful, I think, pedagogically to seminaries and to professors across the board.
John, may I add something as well?
Please. Yeah, please.
In regards to the website, and so we have a listing of all the cohort, all phase 1 and phase 2 participating faculty, and they have their contact information there as well. And so I would suggest if you see something that sticks out that you think like, wow, how did they do that? Maybe you can reach out to them, and they're more than welcome. All of our project leaders love to share their information. There it is right there. There's John sharing it there. And reach out to them, then ask them, well, how did you do that in your course? Or what was the what books and what resources did you come up with? And how did you really come to that? And so I implore you, if you want to, just reach out to folks to ask them about those things as well. Frank, science.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What was that one? Missed that one.
Drew, just since you're on here, do you want to hop on for a minute and just offer some thoughts and let people know what they might, what might be helpful if they want to reach out to you, what you could offer there?
Sure, happy to do so. So just, one thought that's obvious just being on this call, this is a competitive process. There's a lot of seminaries going that are going to apply. There have been a lot of seminaries that have applied in other rounds. So a big part of thinking about your proposal is thinking about a compelling project and thinking about what you can do that is unique, that leverages the strengths of your institution, that leverages maybe unique degree programs or opportunities that you provide your students. I was reflecting that there was a lot of comments about MDiv programs and other degree programs. Something that I remember in previous rounds, there was one or two seminaries that would apply for a non-MDiv, and you would look at the numbers and there would be 15 people in that degree program, but they had an MDiv program with over 200 students. That didn't look as good to reviewers because the goal is to have maximum impact on the seminary, to have kind of science become part of the DNA of your institution, and one of those sources culturally that you draw on to equip your students. And so you want to try to get it kind of in the middle of the seminary as much as you can. And sometimes you have to start on the edges. You start where you and your partner faculty member are, and you think about ways, how do we draw other faculty in? How do we leverage some student enthusiasm for this kind of work to draw other faculty? And there's lots of creative ways that you can engage with some of the other seminaries and get ideas on how they've done these things creatively. So I'm, like John and Curtis, I'm available to respond to emails to help you kind of shape that project. And then it's just a matter of making that short description in the LOI, meeting those requirements, reading those instructions. Those things are very, very important. Reviewers don't like it when it's obvious you haven't read the instructions. So just kind of doing that work, but you got to shape that project first. You got to get the right people involved, think about what strengths you have, link your interests in science with what you think will resonate with your students and with the key core material you're teaching them. Again, you don't want to mismatch there. You don't want to pick some really esoteric area for one of your core courses that is students are going to be like, why is this relevant? You want to find ways that are fairly immediately relevant to them. So those are, actually, let me make one other comment. This program is very unique. I spent a decade at the Templeton Foundation. We funded many programs that gave additional grants out. They would get a large sum of money from Templeton and give small grants out. None of them have given the hands-on kind of coaching, partnering with the recipients at the level that DOSER has and the AAAS team. They want every proposal, even ones they can't fund, to be as strong as possible. And they set up many, many opportunities, even those that get grants. There's continued opportunities to strengthen that project, to make it even better, to help improve the impact and the durability of that project in your seminary. So take advantage of that help. We're here to help you and to make your proposal as strong as possible. I don't know if there's going to be another FAQ, but I know at the full proposal stage, there's multiple sessions like this to really help fine tune and strengthen the work that you're proposing.
Thanks so much, Drew. Yeah, so we're, the LOIs aren't due until October 2nd. And so there is a little bit of time there, and we'll sort of gauge interest there. We might do another one of these sessions at the middle of September if people are going to find that helpful. Maybe we'll send that out, do a poll for that in a week or two. So let's see, is anybody sort of waiting? I don't see any hands raised. Want to make sure people have had a chance. If anybody has any follow-up questions right now, you've been waiting to ask. Great. All right. Well, I just want to take a couple more minutes here. So one of the nice things about this grant, as we talked about a couple of times, is not just connecting with certain ideas of science and certain science papers, but connecting with scientists. Now, you don't have to do this before you apply for the grant. You certainly can, especially if you're in a university setting or if you're close to a university or a college that has science departments. You can certainly say, I've had a conversation with Dr. So-and-so in the biology department at whatever university next to me, and they seem very interested and excited in being a part of this project, or looking through the previous courses online, we would have interest in getting somebody like, Dr. Wiseman, the cosmologist, or somebody else you might have seen in one of the Science for Seminaries videos. So just having that sense that you're not just going to be putting, an essay or two from, a modern evolution biology textbook into your theological anthropology class. We're going to want you to engage more fully. So thinking through what that event, what does that look like for your courses, and then for your large campus event. Again, an LOI is not a lot of time, but anybody can write a paragraph saying, we want to have a bunch of great scientists come to our seminary and talk about their awesome science, and then we'll have some Q&A after, right? Everybody can write that paragraph, right? So what's going to make it, what's going to make it unique, but more importantly, what's going to make it fit your context? What is important to your students, and why is that important? And why is this grant going to help you do that? And so it's answering these very, very practical questions, because just like you, we want this grant to succeed. And so we want to be able to help you make it to its potential. And if it's not really well formed out in your head, then it's going to be hard to actually put that into a 10-page full proposal with a budget, and even harder to actually make it into an 18-month grant. So thinking about the specificity, and as you get into that specificity, I think you'll be able to find, unique ideas come to the front, and how to engage with students and other faculty members and things like that. So yeah, and that's pretty much all I had here. I'm gonna throw it to Curtis.
Yeah, and so you brought up a question that comes up sometimes, John, in regards to faculty members who are in this process might say, well, do I have to engage with the same science I'm engaging with in my courses just as well as in the campus-wide event? And that's not necessarily the case. You don't have to. However, you do want to think, as John was talking about there, about how to be very thoughtful in how the connections between that campus event and those courses are, and the overarching goal that you're setting up there for at your institution. So if you're doing neuroscience and biology or cosmology, doesn't necessarily have to be focused on cosmology and campus-wide event. It might be something else, maybe history of science, that might incorporate those pieces in it. But you will hope that there's a tie or a thread that links all of those together. And so thinking about that as well, if you're thinking about how to tie everything together into a nice network of thought and of ideas as well.
Yeah, and just to close with the, looking at that, don't be afraid to not just go to the Science for Seminaries website, look at the resources there and look at the syllabi, try to find some syllabi that's related to your class. There's 100 and something on there right now. There's probably 1 or 2 that's close to your class. See if anything resonates there. Send it to other faculty members who might be interested. And also just look at AAAS Dozer in general. We have a lot of other projects that might have been dealing with questions that are really pertinent to you. We have a lot of history of public lectures that also might be really pertinent to what you're doing. And that might give you some ideas on how to engage with good science and what that might look like. So don't limit it to just stuff you've read in the last week. Look around our site. There's a lot of stuff there that could really help generate some new ideas for you. And then the last thing I'll say is, you have a whole month until this is turned in. You have time. Take that time to reach out to other faculty members and administrators as soon as possible. Even if you don't really know how this will work, just shoot them an email and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. You know, can I put you down as on board in this early stage? What might this look like? And see if you can get some people involved and have a couple of conversations, and then come back to us. Shoot Drew or Curtis or myself an email and say, hey, you know, we're thinking about doing this. Can I have a brief conversation about the LOI that we can talk through what we're thinking? And the answer is going to be yes. Even if one of us can't do it, we'll pass it to somebody else that we can find a place to have that conversation, because we want strong LOIs too. We want to work with you to make that happen. I see one question here before we go. Is the grant amount set at 75K, or can it be lower? That's not an often question that we get. No, the grant is 75,000. So I know that's a challenge for some places because it's not, you know, it can't fund faculty members for several years. You know, there's a lot it can't fund. So and it is challenging. I especially in this time of COVID and a lot of online schooling. Typically, a lot of the grant funds are just like, we're going to fly a lot of people in and give talks and do events and all that, and do meals and all those pieces. Trust me, we're going through the same stuff with the grant. So we understand shifting funds and what that looks like. So the answer is, you know, well, first of all, the answer is you don't need a budget at an LOI stage. You don't have to worry about that quite yet. But then as you're thinking about it, yeah, think about, well, what can 75 give you? You know, it can, you know, really help with, you know, buying materials for online education. It can bring in some speakers that maybe if it's still Zoom, but it can still bring in higher profile speakers by doing stipends for them. It can fund website stuff, evaluation pieces. You know, there's a lot of stuff that money can do. You know, it can certainly fund part of people's salaries over the course of 18 months or 2 years. So no, one thing we learned from phase 1 to phase 2 of the grant was that setting a definite amount was really helpful for being able to pitch this to a wide variety of seminaries. So that's the set amount for everybody there.
Let me add one more thing, John,
Please,
to your
yeah.
reply there. One of the best uses of money, I think, for many of the seminaries is invested in your faculty and your students.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do sermon competitions, do paper competitions, do research funding, help faculty get books.
Even do stipends for other
Exactly.
faculty to put stuff in their courses.
Many have done mini research grant or you know, curriculum revision grants for faculty that buy out some time over the summer for a 4th, a 5th, a 6th course to be revised. And they set up a little competition. You don't have to predetermine who's on board yet, even at the full proposal stage for something like that. That's a way you're trying to get more buy-in and get this deeper into the DNA of your seminary. So think about how you can invest it in the people that are what keep the seminary going long term.
Yeah, exactly. So Curtis, any final words there?
No, those are all good examples. I was going to mention that, but Drew beat me to the punch. That's the day. Hey, I'll take it. I think the last thing is that this is being recorded, right? And it'll be posted up. So if you want to go back and listen to this again and hear some of the, I guess, the questions as well and answers to those questions, they'll be there for at least a good number of weeks, and at least until the LOIs are closed. So no.
Yeah, and we'll email everyone as soon as we have that recording. Should be in the next couple of days. And we look forward to hearing from each of you and hopefully get an LOI from each of you. And thank you so much for coming to this session today. We really appreciate it and look forward to talking to you soon.